The Indiana Fever had everything going for them: star power, grit, a never-say-die attitude, and the kind of team chemistry that only comes from clawing your way through a season full of doubters. Kelsey Mitchell was on fire, dropping 34 in a playoff game that should have gone down as a career-defining moment. Odyssey Sims, picked up on a hardship contract, looked like she'd been born for the postseason. Aaliyah Boston battled in the paint with the composure of a seasoned vet.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
And Lexi Hull turned into a defensive anchor with a voice, refusing to stay silent when things didn't add up. But even they couldn't compete with the one opponent no team can prepare for: corruption. Because now, all eyes are on the league. Not for the incredible basketball these women played, but for the bombshell allegations that referees were taking bribes. And suddenly, everything about that Fever versus Aces series feels a little too suspicious to ignore. The weird whistles, the blatant no calls, the uneven foul counts. It wasn't just a rough night at the office. It was a pattern. And now there are reports that some of the very officials who made those controversial calls were allegedly pocketing money to ensure a certain outcome. And who benefited? Surprise! The Las Vegas Aces. The league's golden team. The reigning champs. The face of the WNBA's marketing machine. The implication is brutal, that the Fever, despite all their heart and hustle, never had a fair shot. And that's what stings most. Not just for fans, but for players like Mitchell, Sims, and Hull. Players who gave everything and left it all on the floor, only to find out the deck may have been stacked from the start. Their performances weren't just playoff-worthy, they were legacy-building. But legacies can't shine when they're buried under scandal. It's not just about one series. If these bribery allegations hold water, they threaten the entire league's future. The integrity of the WNBA, its growth, its stars, its rising popularity, depends on people believing that what happens on the court is real. That wins are earned, not bought. That stars like Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell won't have their careers shaped by backroom deals and rigged outcomes. The Fever showed up to play. The league, it seems, did not. Now, the spotlight is on the WNBA to respond, to investigate, to clean house. Because fans aren't stupid. Players aren't blind. And the next generation of stars deserves more than a league where hard work can be undone by a crooked whistle. The Indiana Fever gave us hope. The bribery scandal gave us a reality check. And if something doesn't change soon, this league might lose more than a little credibility. It could lose the trust it fought so hard to earn. This is no longer about missed calls. This is no longer about officiating mistakes. This is referees caught taking bribes. And not just any referees, but the exact ones assigned to one of the most important playoff matchups of the season, the Indiana Fever versus Las Vegas Aces. And now the integrity of the entire WNBA season is in jeopardy. The facts are no longer speculative. The same referees who were previously involved in controversial games, whose names kept coming up after suspicious officiating moments, were caught accepting bribes before critical postseason games. And somehow, they were still assigned to officiate the Fever versus Aces semifinal series. That is no longer questionable. It's systemic. This wasn't one bad ref. This wasn't one tight whistle. This was planned corruption, and it happened in the middle of a postseason battle where everything was supposed to be earned. Instead, outcomes were influenced before the first tip-off. And in the middle of all that chaos, the Indiana Fever, the 6th seed team with no big market push, no league protection, just grit, injuries, and one of the gutsiest playoff runs we've seen in years. They went toe-to-toe with the defending champs. And while they should be the talk of the league, their win is now overshadowed by a scandal they never asked for. Let's be absolutely clear. Every game in that series was affected. The whistle didn't just miss a few calls. It shifted momentum, dictated who stayed on the floor, and gave one team the advantage before the ball even left the ref's hand. The favoritism toward the Aces was obvious before the bribery news broke. Afterward, it's inexcusable. During the series, Fever stars like Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston were battered under the rim with no whistle. On the other side, Vegas players got calls for the slightest contact. The imbalance wasn't subtle. It was game-changing. And even with all that, the Fever still fought, still clawed, still survived. But the question now becomes, should they have had to? And what happens now that we know the truth? Because this isn't just about one series anymore. This is a crack in the foundation of the WNBA, a league that has prided itself on growth, progress, and competition now has to answer for letting corruption bleed into its most visible, most marketable moments. And while the league stays quiet, it's the players and coaches who are left to speak up and take the punishment for doing so. Let's talk about Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White, two of the most respected coaches in the league. Two voices who know the game better than most. They saw what was happening. They felt it in real time. And they said what everyone else was too scared to admit. The officiating wasn't just bad, it was dangerous. Reeve and White didn't scream. It didn't insult. They called for investigations, for transparency. And the league responded with fines and warnings. That's how deep this goes. You don't even have to name names anymore. Just questioning the officiating after referees were caught taking bribes is apparently too far. This is what suppression looks like. When the league prioritizes image management over player safety, over fairness, over truth. When speaking honestly becomes a liability. And it's not just coaches. Players are feeling it too. Kelsey Mitchell dropped 34 points against a team stacked with all-stars and media support. She kept her cool. She played through absurd contact. In post-game, she delivered one of the most poised, honest interviews of the year. She acknowledged the bias. She spoke about integrity. She gave props to her teammates, and even praised Caitlin Clark, recognizing her impact and legacy in the making. That's leadership. That's maturity. And that's what the league should be spotlighting. But instead, the spotlight remains on silence, on fines, on damage control. And now, Caitlin Clark is caught in the middle of all of it. Her presence in the league was supposed to be the dawn of a new era. Viewership skyrocketed. Merch flew off the shelves. Interest in women's basketball exploded like never before. But now she's stepping into a league where referees are allegedly protecting certain teams and punishing others. That isn't just threatening her growth, it's undermining her legacy before it even begins. Because what's the point of a breakout rookie season if fans and players alike can't trust the game being played around her? The bias is clear. While Clark is often dismissed or downplayed in certain media spaces, other stars, like Aya Wilson, are shielded from criticism. Wilson's poor shooting night? Barely mentioned. Clark getting hacked at the rim? No foul and no league response. This is what happens when favoritism is baked into the system. It shapes not just who wins, but who the public is allowed to see as worthy. And now the WNBA is losing control of the narrative. What used to be whispers about uneven calls has erupted into full-blown scandal. Referees have been caught. Coaches are protesting. Players are being silenced. And fans? Fans are waking up. They're angry. They're loud. And they're demanding answers. The WNBA says it wants to grow. But growth doesn't come from covering up problems. It comes from addressing them. If the league wants credibility, it has to earn it back the hard way. A full investigation into the referees involved. A transparent report on how those officials were assigned and who knew what and when. Permanent bans for anyone caught taking bribes. Public vindication for the coaches and players who called this out before it exploded. And most of all, reform in how refs are selected, how complaints are handled, and how accountability is enforced. Because if the league continues to suppress dissent, protect corruption, and ignore fan outrage, it's going to lose everything it's worked for. This scandal is not just about the past. It's about the future of women's basketball and whether fans can still believe in it. So now it's up to the league to make a choice. Protect the few or serve the many. Defend the lie or fight for the truth. Because fans aren't going to forget this. And they shouldn't. The players who give everything to this game deserve better. The coaches putting their reputations on the line deserve support. And the fans who believed in the product, they deserve a league that doesn't fold the second the truth becomes inconvenient. If you've been watching all of this unfold and you're done being quiet, now's the time to speak up. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should the officials be banned? Should the Aces playoff wins be reviewed? Should the WNBA issue a formal, public apology to the Indiana Fever? Let us know where you stand. And if you're with the players, with the truth, and with the future of the league, subscribe. This story isn't over. It's only just begun. At this point, the WNBA has backed itself into a corner. A scandal this massive, referees taking bribes during playoff games, is not just a black eye on the league. It's a credibility crisis, an institutional failure, and a slap in the face to every player who's ever trained their whole life for this moment, only to have it hijacked by corruption. And while the league's PR machine works overtime to downplay, deflect, and dilute the outrage, the facts are impossible to spin. The bribery happened. The officials were assigned. The games were played. The bias was clear. And the damage? Ongoing. You cannot call this a growing league when growth is built on silence. You cannot celebrate competitive parity while stacking the deck behind closed doors. You cannot tell fans to trust the process when the process is actively rigged. What's unfolding right now is a full exposure of how deep the favoritism runs and how quick the league is to protect image over integrity. And fans have had it. They watched the Indiana Fever fight tooth and nail against the Las Vegas Aces, a team many already suspected was the league's protected darling. They watched as foul calls broke momentum, as whistles silenced comeback runs, as technicals got tossed for players showing basic emotion. And now, after it's been revealed that the refs were paid off, there's no defending it, no walking it back, no bad game excuse. This was never about bad officiating. This was about the system working exactly as designed, to protect one team's path at the expense of everyone else's sweat, sacrifice, and season. Let's be honest, the Aces didn't need help. They're already loaded. Championship pedigree, top-tier talent. But in a league where image is everything, it's clear the WNBA didn't want to risk their downfall at the hands of a six-seed squad full of hustle, bruises, and momentum. So the script was written, and the refs played their part. What they didn't count on, the Fever refusing to fold, even with the officiating working against them, even with blatant no-calls and dangerous physicality left unchecked. Indiana still managed to win. And that's where the story should have ended. An underdog triumph against all odds. But the scandal robbed them of that story. And now, the conversation isn't about how the Fever pulled off the upset. It's about how they had to beat the Aces and the league's officiating system at the same time. The victory is tainted not by their own doing, but by what was done to them. And if the league doesn't address that publicly, then it's endorsing it. It's saying corruption is acceptable, as long as the outcome is convenient. Let's break this down. Who's actually being protected here? The Aces, who now have every win scrutinized. The corrupt officials, who influenced outcomes and walked into playoff games with bias in their pocket. The league office, which continues to hand down fines to coaches who dare call out the obvious. And who's being punished? The Indiana Fever, who had to fight twice as hard to prove they belonged. Caitlin Clark, whose rising star status is constantly undermined by media deflection and a league reluctant to fully embrace what she represents. Kelsey Mitchell, who performed like a franchise cornerstone and still got overlooked because the drama overshadowed the basketball. Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White, two respected coaches who voiced concerns about officiating and were met with threats instead of support. That's the culture now. Protect the narrative, punish the truth. But here's what the league has failed to understand. This is the most watched, most dissected, most socially amplified season in WNBA history. You can't hide anything anymore. Fans see it. Players feel it. And no amount of highlight reels or polished post-game quotes is going to erase the receipts that are already circulating. Every biased call has been clipped. Every moment of silence from the league has been bookmarked. Every time a player took a hit and got no whistle, it's there. And now, it's part of the conversation. The internet doesn't forget. And the fans? They're keeping score now. So what should happen next? A full, public investigation. No more internal reviews. No more vague statements. Name the officials. Disclose the evidence. Acknowledge the games affected. Apologize publicly to the players and teams impacted. Remove anyone in the officiating pipeline who is aware and complicit. Because until that happens, every game moving forward will carry an asterisk. And for Caitlin Clark, that's a nightmare scenario. She didn't sign up for this mess. She came into the league carrying more hype than any rookie in recent history. She brought fans, sponsors, viewership momentum. And instead of protecting her and elevating her game, the league has left her exposed, on and off the court. She's been fouled harder than most and defended more aggressively than any rookie should be. And still, no consistent whistle. No real protection. That kind of exposure, over time, will wear a star down. Because Clark's legacy deserves to be built in a league where fair play exists, where the outcomes aren't influenced by secret deals, where greatness is earned, not decided. But as long as this scandal goes unanswered, her greatness, and the greatness of every star in the WNBA, comes with doubt attached. This isn't just about the past. It's about the league's future. If you're a sponsor, how do you trust the product? If you're a player, how do you know your performance matters? If you're a fan, how do you watch a game without wondering if the refs already decided the ending? Those questions don't go away. They grow louder with every unanswered scandal. And right now, the WNBA is running out of time to take the mic and own this moment. So here's the bottom line. The Fever deserve better. The fans deserve honesty. The league deserves accountability. And until all of that happens, every grow the game hashtag rings hollow. Because you can't grow a game that's rotting from the inside. You fix it first. You clean it up. You hold people accountable. You rebuild trust. Then, and only then, do you earn the right to celebrate the future. Let's be very clear. What's happening in the WNBA right now isn't a PR issue. It's a legitimacy crisis. This is no longer about fans overreacting. This is no longer about bad calls in a close game. This is referees taking bribes. Not allegedly, not suspected, confirmed. And they were assigned to postseason games that directly impacted playoff outcomes. And yes, one of those games was the Fever versus Aces series. Let's not water it down. This is match manipulation at the highest level of women's basketball. And now, the league is acting like they can control the narrative by going silent. But you can't PR spin corruption. You can't release a carefully worded statement and expect people to forget what they saw with their own eyes. The blown calls, the coincidental technical fouls, the flagrant inconsistency in how physicality was policed. And now we know exactly why it all felt so off, because it was the fact that it took a bribery scandal of this magnitude, for the league to even get fans talking about accountability. That's embarrassing, because the players have been asking for it. The coaches have been screaming for it. And the fans? They've been documenting it. Go on any platform right now. Scroll through the clips. Look at the side-by-side comparisons of calls. Look at the comments from actual athletes, past and present, who've seen this kind of bias fester unchecked for years. The difference now? There's too much attention for it to stay buried. And yet, the WNBA hasn't said a word. So let's say it for them. Referees were caught accepting bribes. And somehow, those same refs were trusted with officiating a playoff series between the Indiana Fever and the Las Vegas Aces, a matchup that became instantly infamous for its lopsided officiating, sketchy whistle timing, and blatant favoritism. And yes, the Aces are talented. Yes, they're a championship-caliber team. But let's stop pretending they weren't handed advantages that had nothing to do with skill. Every time a Fever player went to the rim and got hacked, no call. Every time an Aces player flailed near contact, whistle. Every time Indiana started to build momentum, stoppage. The patterns weren't subtle. They were mechanical, and it didn't just impact the scoreboard. It impacted player safety, player availability, and public trust. Do you really think it's a coincidence that fans and coaches have been raising red flags about these same refs for months? Or that Cheryl Reeve and Stephanie White, two of the most respected minds in the game, have gone public with concerns about officiating integrity? They knew something was wrong. They felt it, and now they've been proven right. But instead of listening, the league fined them, punished them, tried to silence them for simply doing their jobs, protecting their players. And now, those fines look less like discipline and more like retaliation. Let's talk about the cost. Because while the Aces walked away with another playoff win, the Fever walked away with their reputations in question, their bodies bruised, and their victory overshadowed by a scandal they didn't create. And that's what stings the most. This should have been a celebration for Indiana. A young underdog team, fighting through injuries, overcoming the odds, pushing past officiating bias, and still managing to beat the league's most favored team. Instead, they got robbed of that narrative, stripped of their moment. Now the story isn't about grit or growth. It's about a tainted system that nearly stole their postseason. And it affects more than just the Fever. It affects Caitlin Clark, whose rookie year is being pulled into a power struggle she didn't sign up for. Clark was supposed to represent a new era of the league. Mainstream attention, massive crowds, record-breaking viewership. She brought all of that. But what she walked into instead was a hostile environment, where her presence is weaponized, her fouls are ignored, and her every move is met with resistance from inside and outside the league. And now, it turns out she was playing in games officiated by corrupt refs. How do you build a legacy in that? Because it doesn't matter how many points you score if the refs decide when your team gets to play offense. It doesn't matter how many fans show up if the league is more concerned with managing optics than ensuring fair play. And if the WNBA won't protect its biggest draw, what chance do any of the other players have? Caitlin Clark's rise should have been a unifying moment. Instead, it's been met with sabotage, selective enforcement, and silence. And it's not just a disservice to her. It's a disservice to everyone watching her bring thousands of new fans into the league. And that's the real tragedy here. The WNBA is at the height of its visibility. The audience is growing. The demand is surging. The talent is unreal. But the league is too busy covering for corrupt refs to capitalize on any of it. And if they don't fix this now, they will lose everything. You cannot ask fans to invest in a product that refuses to protect its core values. You cannot market a league as elite if outcomes can be bought behind the scenes. And you cannot grow the game if the game itself can't be trusted. This isn't complicated. It's about accountability. The refs who took bribes? Gone. Not reassigned. Not suspended. Banned. The players and coaches who called out the corruption? Cleared. Fines reversed. Public apologies issued. The playoff series in question? Audited. Transparent review of every game officiated by compromised referees. This isn't optional. It's the bare minimum. It's how you rebuild trust. And if the WNBA won't do it, the fans will keep reminding them. Every game, every tweet, every press conference, every empty seat. Because this league can't grow on drama. It has to grow on honesty, on competition, on merit. That's what the Fever brought to the floor. That's what Clark brings every night. That's what Mitchell delivered with her 34-point masterpiece. And it's what the league owes every single person who believes in what women's basketball can be. So now it's your turn. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should the WNBA audit the Aces' playoff wins? Should the bribed refs be banned for life? Should Clark and the Fever get public acknowledgement for playing through corruption? And if you're with the players, with the fans, with the truth, subscribe. Because we're not letting this story die quietly. We're keeping the spotlight right where it belongs, on the truth the league can't hide from anymore. The game isn't over, but the excuses? They're done.